Last Thursday evening, the three-day inquest into the death 1.5 years ago of a Bunratty banqueting manager ended. The jury's verdict was accidental death. The jury concluded that a person or persons unknown had struck the deceased and caused him to fall. He was then accidentally struck by a car. Since Patrick Nugent's death, there has been intense speculation as to how precisely he died. After a manslaughter trial and now an inquest, the events of that night remain shrouded in mystery. This has been compounded by a suppression of evidence and by conflicting statements from key witnesses. The inquest jury obviously found all of this unsatisfactory because they've called on the Minister for Justice to reopen the investigation into Patrick Nugent's death. Gary Agnew has been looking at the circumstances surrounding the death at Bunratty.
On the 10th of February last year, a function took place here in Bunratty Folk Park. It was a party to celebrate the 40th wedding anniversary of Shannon Airport's executive chef, William Ryan, and his wife, Chrissy. Around 60 guests attended that night, but the celebration ended in tragedy. In the early hours of the morning, a puzzling incident took place, which resulted in the death of the 23-year-old banqueting manager on duty that night, Patrick Nugent. 14 known individuals were still around the premises at that time. 5 staff, Chef Ryan and his wife, and 7 guests, including 2 Gardaí, one of them a detective sergeant, both of them based at Shannon Garda Station. The staff have stated that just after 4 o'clock, with the exception of Patrick Nugent himself, all of them were in and around the kitchen area. At approximately 4:10, they heard the sound of roaring coming from the direction of the function room. Led by 19-year-old Declan O'Neill, the staff made their way through the function room, and just inside the entrance door, found their manager lying on his back in obvious pain.
We heard the roars. We didn't know what it was. So after about a minute, we went out, and I went straight through the reception. I stopped at the, I went straight through the function room. I stopped just going into the reception, and I seen a woman. She had her hands up to her face, and she seemed to be crying. So after that, I just looked, and I kept going. I just went around the corner, and there was Pat in the ground. And I bent down, and I said, "Pat, what's wrong with you?" I thought somebody had hit him or he fell or something. So I said, "Get up." So he said, "Oh, my stomach." He clocked me. So he was kind of crying at this stage. So I kind of said, "Man, get up." And he says he clocked me again. And he started going into kind of a coma and that.
At about 4 o'clock in the morning, we were in the kitchen. Vera, Mary Egan and Declan O'Neill. And we heard this most pitiful roar. And Declan said to us, "Did you hear that, lads?" And we said we did. So there was a second roar coming nearer. So we went out into the barn, and we met a lady at the end of the stage, very frightened looking. And we asked her what happened. And she said, "It was one of your own lads." So with that, we continued out to the reception. And there was Pat Nugent, lying on the flat of his back on the ground with his legs crossed, dying.
Were you given any explanation as to what may have happened?
I was called to one side by one of the men afterwards, and he just said to me, "Did he ever suffer from fits?" And I said no, and he just said it must have been a heart attack. And that's...
So what happened then?
Well, there was one of the guards there trying to revive him, and did a woman come over and say to him, "You may know what you're doing, but you may be doing the wrong thing now." So he just said to her to keep out of it.
These guards were guests at the function?
I think so, yeah.
And their wives were with them?
Yeah.
Patrick Nugent was taken to Barrington's Hospital in Limerick and was pronounced dead on arrival. He had suffered massive internal injuries. The post-mortem revealed a ruptured liver, a crushed abdomen filled with blood, dislocated ribs, and extensive bruising to the lungs. But there are 2 puzzling facts about Mr. Nugent's death. The pathologist's report suggests that the injuries he suffered were, for the most part, consistent with some form of traffic accident, but there were no marks of any kind found on Mr. Nugent's legs. This fact, coupled with subsequent forensic evidence, clearly suggests that Mr. Nugent was either on the ground or very close to it at the time of impact when he was crushed up against this wall. There's a second puzzling fact. The staff on duty that night who were in the kitchen when they heard the moans and groans came out, and they found their banqueting manager not here on the ground, but inside, on the flat of his back, these double doors. Because of these puzzling facts, and because two of the guests still on the premises at the time of the incident were guards, an intense investigation got underway. Deputy Commissioner John Paul McMahon travelled down from Dublin to Ennis to oversee that investigation. Several reconstructions were staged in the folk park, with all the key witnesses being brought back there. In the meantime, Patrick Nugent was buried next to his family home. His family had no idea how he met his death, but Shannon was rife with rumours. The people of 6 Mile Bridge held a public meeting in support of the Nugent family. Everyone wanted to know what caused their neighbour's death.
I am, like all of you here tonight, here to show my solidarity and support for the Nugent family in this terrible time. We are here, I think, because all of us want to see a clear statement of the facts surrounding the circumstances of their son's death. I think it is important, and indeed it has been to be seen as an element of the importance that the community attached to it, that there's such a gathering here tonight. It is important that the community's mind, as well as the Nugent family's mind, is put at ease in relation to all the circumstances relating to Paddy's death.
I came here because I was concerned about the situation in Bunratty. It hadn't been fully explained in the media, and a number of malicious rumours had been spread around the community, you know.
Can I ask you why you came here tonight?
Well, I came here tonight to see justice done, and I feel all this thing is taking too long. And we're pretty adamant that we want to see a proper ending to it.
Well, the reason I came here tonight was that I worked with Pat. He was one of the finest people I ever knew. We worked with him, we had a great working relationship, and I suppose he was the easiest person one could ask to work with. It's impossible to think that he's gone, that he's not going to come back, and every day you go to the folk park you expect to see him. All I can say is that I hope that by being here tonight that everybody present will be able to support the Nugents and give them any support, whatever way they need it.
I originally took him on as a young boy, and they started off in the kitchen from Bunratty Castle. Since then he has been with us for the past 11 years.
So it's a loss for you?
Very much so, yes indeed.
Patrick Nugent lived here in 6 Mile Bridge with his parents and 2 brothers, just minutes away from where he worked and tragically died. For this close community, his death has caused grief and concern. And for his father, the lack of any explanation for Patrick's death has compounded his grief.
So the 2 girls that came to me, they said it was, he fell. It was a heart attack. He collapsed. So I asked him then, would he be, so I said, somebody must have hit him. And the guards said, no, nobody hit him. There's no marks on him.
Like they were coming in, and they said, you know, they knew who was involved. But they just could not feel, you know, they just could not say what happened. And, you know, they didn't really tell us a whole pile. I mean, you know, very little, in fact.
And the first you heard was that it was a heart attack inside
the
building?
That's right, yeah. Just dropped off.
But 3 days later you were told that he'd been hit by a car.
That's right, the person missed it.
Well, one thing I have to say about Patrick, he was well reared and well brought up. And if he was a robber or a blackguard, he was doing his job as he should do it. And if he was a robber and a blackguard, he'd be alive today. But it is very sad now. My wife has gone to a hospital with the shock of it. And my family is broke up.
It was during one of the reconstructions staged by the Gardaí at the scene of the incident that Chef Ryan said he wanted to make a more detailed statement. He stated that Patrick Nugent had said goodnight to him outside in the yard moments before Mr. Ryan's car lurched forward and crashed into the car belonging to Guard Commons. He also stated that just before the collision, he saw Detective Quinlan arguing with another guest, Gerard O'Connor, outside the function room entrance. For the Gardaí, it was a long and repetitive investigation. Over a 6-week period, almost every guest at the party was interviewed at least once. 2 months after Patrick Nugent's death, Chef William Ryan was charged on 3 counts: dangerous driving, manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. He was acquitted on all 3. The judge in the trial said that there was no forensic evidence to prove that Patrick Nugent had been assaulted before being hit by a car. But the judge did say there was evidence of some kind of cover-up. The Nugent family then pinned their hopes on the inquest, where all the key witnesses would be cross-examined. Sean McBride represented the family at the proceedings. Last Thursday night, just before 9 o'clock, Patrick Nugent's inquest ended when the jury returned their verdict. The 8-man jury decided on the evidence and cross-examination put before them that Patrick Nugent died as a result of being hit by a person or persons unknown, causing him to fall when he was then accidentally run over by Chef Ryan's car. The legal representatives for the family asked the jury to add a rider to their verdict, and they did. They concluded that because of the suppression of evidence, the Minister for Justice should reopen the investigations into Mr. Nugent's death. A copy of the book of evidence used in the trial of Chef William Ryan and used in the inquest into the death of Patrick Nugent held last week has come into our possession. Some 400 pages of forensic evidence and statements, and in the case of key witnesses, up to 4 and 5 separate statements. And there are 3 clear factors emerging from this book of evidence. Firstly, a high consistency in the statements given by the staff on duty that night. A high degree of inconsistency and disagreement in some of the statements of key witnesses, including the 2 Gardaí present that night. And above all, the memos and statements of the investigating Gardaí clearly show that, at least in the early days of their inquiry, they were not given full cooperation. Among the crucial evidence was the statements of Garda John Talty, who went to Bunratty about an hour after the incident. In his evidence, he says one of the guards at the function, Jim Cummins, told him that he found Nugent lying inside the doors. The other guard of the party, Detective Sergeant Eugene Quinlan, suggested to Talty that Pat Nugent had a heart attack and added that no way had he been hit. At last week's inquest, Garda Talty said both Detective Sergeant Quinlan and Garda Cummins had been most unforthcoming that night. At one stage, Talty says he found Quinlan and Cummins in the kitchen on the phone. Talty then asked them, "What the F happened, lads? Do you think we're idiots?" Shortly after that, Detective Sergeant Quinlan took Guard Talty aside and said there were no marks on Nugent, and then added, "Do the best you can for Jim's sake." The book of evidence also indicates on the day after the incident, a number of key witnesses all met or spoke on the phone to each other. Detective Sergeant Quinlan, Guard Cummins, Chef Ryan and another guest named Gerard O'Connor all spoke to each other separately. Garda Quinlan's wife, Alison, claims Gerard O'Connor rang her prior to his second meeting with the guards and said he was going with us anyway the other night. Chef Ryan insists O'Connor called to his house that day and said, "The guards have been talking to me, Bill. I told them nothing." As the various statements were gathered, it became clear there were contradictions about just where people were at the time of the incident. Detective Sergeant Quinlan, who refused to sign any statement for over a week, claims he was in the kitchen. Garda Cummins says Quinlan was sitting in the function room with him and their 2 wives. Gerard O'Connor claims that Detective Quinlan and Guard Cummins were with him at the bar. The staff's evidence suggests only they were around the kitchen area at the time of the incident. One staff member, Declan O'Neill, says that there was no one at all inside the function room when he went into the kitchen moments before the bang. The conflict of evidence doesn't end there. Garda Cummins says he was administering first aid to Nugent when the doctor arrived. But the doctor insists he never saw Cummins at that stage. Cummins initially claimed that he moved his car away to make room for the ambulance, but it subsequently transpired that Garda Cummins moved his car from the scene of an accident because he had no insurance. Confronted with all this, the inquest jury returned a verdict of accidental death caused by a person or persons unknown assaulting Pat Nugent, knocking him in the way of Chef Ryan's car. The jury added a rider that because of the suppression of evidence, the guards should now reinvestigate how Patrick Nugent died. The essence of Patrick Nugent's death lies in a serious conflict of evidence. On the one hand, you have two guards who were present at the function saying that they came from inside the function room and found Patrick Nugent lying just inside this door. On the other hand, you have Chef Ryan saying he was in his car just about to go home when he saw a ferocious argument going on outside the doors between one of the guards and another invited guest. After the collision, Mrs. Ryan says she saw a body being dragged inside by Detective Eugene Quinlan and another guest. A staff member insists that Patrick Nugent's dying words were, "He clocked me, he clocked me." So it remains a mystery how Patrick Nugent was close to the ground when he was struck and how his body was found inside the doors by a number of key witnesses. Last night in 6 Mile Bridge, the Patrick Nugent Committee and other neighbours met for the first time since the inquest.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to this meeting tonight. I would first like to tell you that we have established a post office box number in 6 Mile Bridge, which is number 5, in connection with the Nugent Support Fund. Now, the purpose of this meeting is to discuss the current developments and progress in relation to the Nugent Support Fund.
Seamus, you've had a well-attended meeting here tonight, which is just over. What has the Committee for Patrick Nugent decided?
We are here tonight to give community and financial support to the Nugent family, and that is what this committee was set up for, and we are going to continue to do that.
And I gather also you made another decision this evening as well.
Well, as you heard there was a resolution passed requesting the committee to forward the petition to the Minister to have this further inquiry into this case pursued. So we will be doing that over the next few days, and we would hope that it would get a favourable response from the Minister. In the meantime, we'll just hold a watching brief and hope that ultimately everything will be solved to the satisfaction of this community, which I might add is still very perturbed about this very sad affair.
The Nugents still have the support of their neighbours. For family and friends, Patrick Nugent's mysterious death is still a current issue.
Well, I was satisfied enough, but I would have been more satisfied if the full truth had come out. I think the full truth did not come out.
So how do you feel now, 1.5 years after the incident, about what has happened?
Well, what I'd like now is that I'd like the Minister would get to work on it now, and that he will be able to, I hope, we're praying that he will be able to get to the root of things.
Martin, it's been a fairly difficult 1.5 years with an awful lot happening. How do you feel about it?
I feel rather bitter like that after 18 months, very little, well, nothing, we're not much further on, really. And you'd imagine after 18 months that we'd know the full facts by now. It's possible we may never know the full facts, but, you know, it's not much good to us, like.
So what do you hope for then?
We hope that the investigation will not end here, and that hopefully fresh evidence will come out, and maybe proceedings will be able to go further.
John, what's important to you about it? What do you want?
Well, important to us now at the moment is that if it could go some bit further than the inquest. The inquest did end up fairly, we were fairly happy with it, but we would like to see more coming to a satisfactory conclusion at this stage.
And what for you is a satisfactory conclusion?
On that, if it could be established that who did assault Patrick, that's what mostly concerns me at this stage.
Martin, do you hope that can be found out? Do you think that?
Yeah, I certainly hope that it can be found out. Like, whether it can or not is another thing.
And you're happy with the view of the inquest jury that the investigation should be reopened?
Yeah, well, we're satisfied with the results of the inquest, but it was hard for the jury to come to any other decision considering the conflict of evidence that was there and suppression of evidence, I think they called it. There was an amount to it, so we're happy with the result of the jury. Like.
And Mr. Nugent, what do you hope will happen in the near future?
Well, what I hope now is that the minister will investigate this to the full, and that he will be able to get to the root of the whole thing.
We're not out for revenge like on anyone. We're just out for the truth, really, and that's mainly what we've been after since day one. And as of the moment, we haven't got that, so we're going to pursue it to the end of it.
Well, I feel that it was a terrible thing for it to happen, a boy like Patrick to be killed the way he was. If it is let go, like the same thing can happen again to somebody else.
That report from Gary Agnew. Tomorrow night, a programme about one of the most frightening words to enter the language, AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Once confined to homosexuals, hemophiliacs and Haitians, now in the United States, victims have been found in the population generally. As of now, AIDS is incurable and it is invariably